Right. Whew. I'm now also again in front. Apparently I'm now being the new introducer. And on request, I'm now introducing the next two lovely people. Now, you see a lot of color on stage, right? So if you see this wave of green also in the middle of the room, you see people of Limon. Now, on stage you also see the wave of green, and that is Baris and Marloes from Limon. Now, they come from a faraway place, some of us call the Netherlands. I had the pleasure of meeting Baris for the first time in Finland United in Ghent 3 years ago.
Yeah, perfect.
We gave a presentation there too. And ever since last year, or a year and a half ago, 2 years, we all have the pleasure of working together for Frontend United. Now, Frontend United is the orange wave. It's more of a wrinkle, it's more of a ripple, it's not really a wave, but it's a wave maybe in some context. Now, that's the orange, right? So the people from what you see in front, they sometimes wear green and they sometimes also wear orange, and there is a legend that goes that if Baris falls asleep, he still turns blue, because in his heart he still thinks about Drupal all the time. Now, I didn't have much time to prepare, so this is what's coming on. Now, Social Night 2 years ago, for the people that weren't in the keynote a few hours ago, Social Night 3 years ago of Drupal Camp in Ghent, Marloes for the very first time, 2 years ago?
Yes.
For the very first time came to a conference as a totally new person, not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go, and that's where Marloes then got to meet Baris, and now they work together already. So it's quite an interesting turn of events, I think. Now, it even gets better. I think every single person in this room has the absolute extraordinary honor of being a member of the audience for the very first presentation Marloes is ever going to give. So, yes, thank you. I ask you, no, I beg you, okay? Give Marloes the most warm welcome you have ever given for any presentation before. An applause, stand up, break down this place. And welcome Marloes.
Wow, what an introduction. Let me see. Why is this not working? There we go. Yes. So, thanks everyone for showing up, and good to see so many people here in the audience. This can basically mean three things, I think. Either you plan to go to the talk about GraphQL and you walked into the wrong room, or you fell asleep during Chandeep's talk, or you actually care about accessibility, and then we are very glad that you came here today. I am Baris Wanschers. I am Managing Director and Partner at Limon Groen. As Mathieu said, I'm co-organizing Frontend United. I'm also board member of the Dutch Drupal Foundation, Stichting Drupal Nederland.
Yeah, I don't think I have to introduce myself, but hi, I'm Marloes.
So we'll have to switch the microphone, since apparently only this one is being recorded, so we cannot use the handheld for Marloes. So sorry for the noise up front. So at Limon Groen we value accessibility a lot, and we find it very important that the websites that we build are easy to use by anyone. Either if you're on a desktop with fiber internet, or on a small screen in the train with a bad internet connection, or using a screen reader because you are blind, everyone should have the same experience using a website. And since we work with this subject a lot, we thought it might be useful to share some of our tips and tricks with you today. And we built up our presentation in the following order. So this is what we're going to talk about. And also the slides can be found on element.groen, oftewel limongroen.nl/quickwins. So first, what does accessibility actually mean? According to the W3C, it basically means this. Give you some time to read. Basically, websites, tools and techniques should work for everyone in all circumstances. And no less than 15% of all the people worldwide have some form of disability, according to the WHO, the World Health Organization. According to another study of Microsoft Netherlands, even 25% of all the people in the Netherlands have a disability. And that can be many things. It can be blind or colorblind or deaf or maybe partially deaf or having trouble reading difficult words or being physically disabled. There's so many forms of disability. So making websites accessible, you help a lot of people, like 15 to 25% of the people. But the nice thing is that when making a website accessible, you're not only helping the people who actually need it, but you also help people who temporarily need it. And I have some examples of that. Say subtitles. The accessibility guidelines state that if you use a video on your website, you should have subtitles so people who are deaf can understand what's happening on the video. But for myself, if I'm in the train and I want to watch a video, I don't want to turn on the audio to understand the video because then I disturb all my passengers in the train. So if a video doesn't have subtitles in it, I would skip the video in the train. And research from Facebook shows that 82% of the videos on the platform is viewed with the sound off. So making sure that a video is accessible by adding subtitles, you're not only helping the deaf people, blind people, but you're also helping people who are temporarily disabled. And the same goes for contrast. Like the accessibility guidelines state that there should be enough contrast between the text and the background color so that people can read the text. And that's really helpful for people who are badly sighted or maybe colorblind. It's good for elder people, like my parents maybe, my grandmother. But it's also useful for people who use their mobile and are in the sun, outside. Websites with low contrast are really hard to read in the sun. Another example, headings. If you write your HTML using semantic markup, like really explanatory markup, ever-propping heading structure, for example, that's really helpful for screen readers, or actually needed for screen readers to understand the content on the website and read it out in a proper way to people who are blind. But also Google is kind of a blind user of your website, and having a proper heading structure, or having proper text descriptions on your images helps Google understand the content on your web page. So accessible websites actually score better on Google. And the last example is keyboard navigation, which is needed if someone is disabled and cannot use a mouse. It's needed, then they use the keyboard to navigate through the content on the website, for example, drop-down menus, or just navigate and clicking on links. But myself, as an advanced internet user, if I fill in a form, for example, I tend to use the keyboard to tap between the form elements instead of using the mouse. So having a proper HTML according to the semantic markup, it really helps physical disabled users as well as advanced internet users. But making websites accessible is important for many reasons. Give me a second. Since more and more products are offered online alone, only online, more and more people are dependent of digital services. And for commercial organizations, it's a way to reach a bigger audience, the 25 to 15% of the people. Governments must make sure that all their services are accessible and available to everyone. But I think it's more than that. It's not because we can, it's not because we should, but it's because we can. And I think we should do this. Because technology is no longer a limiting factor. So to give you an idea of what can go wrong, we'd like to show you a few examples. The devil is in the details, and even the smallest error can lead to a complete inaccessible website. So let's start with an example from the Dutch Railroad, the Nederlandse Spoorwegen. When you open the website, they show you this model. The model it's not possible to click it away with your keyboard alone. You cannot use the escape key to click it away. And if you use the text, you will see in the background that I'm tabbing now below the model. So let's repeat it once more just to be sure. So there's model. I want to tap to the not agree or agree button, but it's tabbing in the background, and it's impossible to click this away without a mouse. This is the Dutch Railroad, the biggest website. This is bol.com. This is the biggest, I think, one of the biggest web shops in the Netherlands. They decided to hide the default focus outline, meaning that if you use the tab key to navigate, you have no idea which link is active at the moment. You can see it in the address bar in the left bottom corner. So I'm tapping now, I'm clicking on several links, but I have no idea where I am. And it's strange that these huge websites don't have this working correctly. This is an example of InVision, a contrast error. So there's a form that asks me to fill in my email address. You can already see that the text contrast is really low below the checkbox. But at this point, it's suggesting me, like, I'm typing m.com instead of me.com, and it's giving an error in pink, on a pink background, stating that. And you cannot submit the form at this point. You have to select the text. Just once more. You have to select the text to read the text. Ready. This is a website for web designers. For web designers. So we have a lot of tools that we can use to make our website better for everyone. And we have guidelines that help us making good websites. The WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And this is a kind of a guidebook with rules, regulations, success criteria on how to build accessible websites. These rules are divided into levels from A to AAA, and the government should adhere to level AA. It's the government standard. All these success criteria are spread across 4 categories, which are roughly about perceiving the content, how to reach it, how to understand it, and how to maintain it. The last one is more about quality. So to summarize further, here's an overview of all the rules, divided into 4 categories and the 3 levels. In total, we have 78 rules, of which 50 are in A and AA. And to give you a better example, to make it a bit more clear, say, for example, if you look at language detection. So the success criteria about language detection. This is part of the understandable category. If you look at level A, single A, you have to make sure that the language of the page is written down in your HTML, so that the screen reader can understand that the language of the page it's looking at. AA, you have to also tell the screen reader if the language within the page switches from one to another language. I'll give you an example of this. And AAA, you, for example, have to write abbreviations out. So you have to make sure that all the abbreviations on your page are written out fully. So this is an example. HTML language is Dutch, is NL for a Dutch website, or a Dutch web page. And if I, on this web page, well, this is an English example, so I should have written language AN, of course. Prepping the meal is called mise en place in French. Because I'm switching to a French few words, I have to state that in my HTML. If I wouldn't do this, my screen reader would say, like, prepping the meal is called mise en place, something like that in French. It's trying to pronounce the French words in English. So by doing this, the screen reader can switch to French. And then for abbreviations, for example, you write down what HTML actually means. So time for the real quick wins. And for that, I hand the microphone over to Marloes.
It's too big for my head.
Is it?
Yeah.
I have a huge head.
Okay, time for the real quick wins. We want to show you some quick wins in 5 different topics. Alternative, contrast, colors, semantic HTML, and keyboard navigation. Kicking off with alternatives. So if you have any non-text content on your website, you should provide it with a textual alternative. So images. They need an alternative text to tell screen readers what's on the image. But this text is also loaded when your image can be displayed because of a poor internet connection or when the image is broken. So an alternative text is added with the alt attribute. And Drupal automatically adds this attribute when you fill in the alt text field. And this field is part of a media item, and it's enabled by default, so you don't have to configure anything. It already does that for you. So when you fill the field in, don't start with picture of or photo of, because the screen reader already does that for you. So otherwise it would be like photo of a cat, photo of a photo of a cat. And that's really weird, right? So instead make the text descriptive, like a cat wearing sunglasses. So when you add an image in Twig, also add an alt attribute. But when the image is for decoration, don't leave the alt attribute behind. Add it, but leave it empty, so the screen reader understands. Okay, I can skip this. I don't know what's on the I don't need to know what's on the image to understand the further context of the page. And also, when you add an image as a link, use the alt text and to describe where the link goes to instead of what the image is. So we already talked a little bit about subtitles in videos. They come in handy for deaf people, but also in a crowded room or in the train. And I wanted to show you a small demonstration. This is a random YouTube video I picked. I trimmed it, of course. And if you don't know this epic scene, you have no idea what she just said. But wait for it, wait for it. I now enable the subtitles in YouTube by adding, clicking on the first button, and then it will automatically start. So now we all know that Jon Snow knows nothing. Next, I want to mention contrast. Always add a good contrast ratio between your foreground color and your background color. So if you have any default text, make sure it's at least 4.5 to 1. And if you have some larger text or when the text is bold, a ratio of 3 to 1 will do as well. So if we look at the example earlier we saw in the video, the right box would be much better, right? So don't add text above images. And it always looks good in design because the designer uses the great photos. So as you see in the top corner, there's white text on a very dark background. But when an editor uploads another image, it's unreadable. So if it is really unavoidable, at least add a kind of overlay with your CSS to make sure the text is readable. But even if you have a high contrast ratio, color alone is not good enough to communicate information. So, for example, if you have any form errors, if you take a look at the both boxes, the error is exactly the same. I tried to make an article and I totally forgot to fill in the title, which is a required field. However, if I was colorblinded, I would see something like this. And I don't know about you guys and some girls and baby upstairs. Oh no, baby more. I wouldn't say that is an error on the left side, right? So therefore you should enable inline form errors to make it better. Also links shouldn't be communicated by color alone, especially when it's placed in continuous text. So in both examples, slippers is marked as a link. However, in the left example, it's quite hard to see. But on the right, it also has an underline. And now it's better recognizable. Also for people with color blindness. But of course, visual presentation like underlining a link is important. However, we must not forget to create a context and a structure that is meaningful, whatever the styling is. So, for example, a language, as Boris already showed us. We have to set the language so that the screen reader can pronounce the text correctly. And I had to learn this the hard way, because one time I totally forgot to switch it to Dutch. It was still on English. And it was really like Marloes, and what's Marloes? It was actually my name, like Marloes, but it cannot be pronounced in English, so it almost left me with an identity crisis here. So in Drupal you can set a correct HTML language by configuring the site's content, configuration, regional language, and languages. So if I mark English, it will result in HTML language English. And if I turn to Spanish, it will be HTML language Español. Setting a page title also provides context to the page content. So it's the first thing the screen reader mentions when a page is loaded. So you have to be careful with if you're using single page applications, since there is no page reload, the page title won't be updated. Also, the page title is added as title in the browser tabs. So if you open multiple tabs, it's quite hard to find which page is which. So in the first example, you have two titles and two pages. It's always my website. However, if I have the other one, it's just my website and another page. But you don't have to worry about this one because Drupal already does it for you. The page title is automatically set in your head based on what you fill in the title field from a node. You can influence this title attribute by adding the meta tag module. And if you use any tokens, like I did in this case, I have the current page title, and then I applied with the site name, for example, Legal Home. Landmarks communicate structure to a screen reader, and it's a great boost for your SEO, what Baris already mentioned. So there are 5 important landmarks. We have a header, we have a footer, we have main, navigation, and a site. And they have all their own role. So if I want to add a sidebar to my website, I could create a div with a class sidebar and add some styling to it. So in that case, it would look like a sidebar because I added the correct styling. However, the div doesn't say anything, it's just a helper. So if I would replace it with a side landmark, it does communicate, okay, I look like a sidebar because I have the sidebar styling, but the site also communicates I am a sidebar. Just like landmarks, heading tags provide information about structure, of course, and also the headings shouldn't be made based on classes only. Instead, use heading tags. It's like creating a table of content. If you use these heading tags, don't skip any ranks. And in Drupal, I think this is quite a puzzle. So if we look at this example, we have this news item, and I have a first heading, that's the page title. I have a content, and then I have a related items block, which has an H2. And then I have other news items in the teaser view mode with a third heading tag. So if I would click on the link, I would suggest that I go to a latest news page with all the news items that look like the teaser view mode, something like this. However, since I mentioned the teaser view mode has a H3 heading tag, and the page title now has a H1 heading tag, so I missed the H2 heading tag. And I'm not really sure what's best practice in this case. I tried to make a pre-process to make the heading tag variable based on which route it has. I tried to make several view modes that look the same, but the heading tag was different. Sometimes I use a visible heading too, of course. I'm not really sure what's the best case, so if you have any ideas about that, please let me know. Headings also bundle information. Therefore, it's very important to not place any content above headings. So if you look at the example in the top corner, we have these 2 events. We have a very nice dinner, and I really love to eat, so I will be there, of course. And if I see this, I would say it's on Friday, it's tonight. So if I would create a structure that, based on what I see in the example, I would have a date, a title, a description, and a cat licking a pizza. So if I turn off my CSS, it would be something like this. And if I would read this as a book, as a screen reader does, I would have a title, the description, the cat again, and a date. Saturday. Something went wrong here. Because the date is actually part of the Drupal contingent, of course. But since it's placed above the title, I would assume that it's part of the other part. Well, we can fix this. So I created a new structure. And in this case, I placed the date under the heading and just manipulated the visual presentation with flag top. So now I have a title, the correct date in this case, and all the further information we need. So with the helper classes, I prepped my title and my date and description, and I flexed it and I gave the date a order min1. And this way the visual presentation will be the exact same as on the previous slide, and the structure is correct. Keyboard navigation. So a website must be operable by using your keyboard. So by typing you can skip to all links. With the return and spacebar you can trigger some action and something. You can use the arrows to navigate through the menu. So if you're using your keyboard instead of the mouse, the focus is the indicator of where you are on a website. So like we earlier saw in the book.com website, if you set your outline to 0 instead of the browser default, and I know it's not really pretty, but the other case you cannot see where you are. But you can adjust the outline to your needs, like Schiphol did in this case. They just adjusted the outline with the dotted line in their brand color. The focus order should be logical as well, and also Baris mentioned this earlier with the NS. So if you have a model open, make sure you set the focus to it directly. Also when you open a menu, it should be reachable. If you don't set your focus to your menu when it's opened, you cannot reach your menu, and that's not what you want. But sometimes you hide your menu, and you can still tab through it. And I want to show you a small demonstration of a great news platform in the Netherlands, NOS. As you can see, I'm tabbing through the website, and then finally my focus is gone. And I will show you with my mouse where it is. So if you have some visually hidden content, make sure it doesn't receive any focus. So now we're still tabbing through the links. It's also desirable to tab through generic links. Now that is really annoying to tab through generic links since the voiceover will be saying in the first case like read more, read more, read more. So instead make the links descriptive. For where the taste is king, if it's never too late for chocolate. And it's never too late for chocolate, of course. This is also very good for SEO, since you don't have duplicate content all over your page. And there's one special link that I would like to mention as a last quick win for now. A skip link helps keyboard users to skip repetitive content. So if you have, of course, most of the websites have a site logo and then the main menu and the search box and what else. And by using the skip link, you can skip all of these by every page load. So I will show you a small demonstration of the Schiphol Airport website. So I first load the page and I come to the skip link and I will skip it for now. So I tap through all the menu items and then I will reach the main content right here. So now we'll do a page reload and then use skip link. And then I will just start at the read the tips. Is it read the tips? Yeah. So if you have a massive menu, this is very desirable. So the styling of a skip link is already incorporated in Drupal, and it's done with two classes: the visually hidden class and the focus class, when it has focus. This way, the screen reader still can detect it, but it's not visible until it receives focus. And a skip link must be the first item on your page that should receive focus when it's loaded. The skip link is already incorporated in Drupal as well. The actual skip link is in the HTML twig file, and the destination can be found in the page template. So if you create a custom theme, don't forget to import these lines as well. And now I'll skip the word to Baris again.
Thank you, Marloes. This is the last microphone switch we have. So a lot of tips and tricks. We have some free tools for you to use while testing your websites that you create. These are a few, so write them down or just download the slides. These are mostly our plugins for your Chrome browser. X is a great tool to test for accessibility bugs, so it will give you an overview of all the contrast errors, all the wrong headings, a lot of issues. If you like, for example, have two links very near to each other on the page with the same text, it will throw an error. Wave toolbar is kind of similar to X. It's a bit older. It's not really up to date with the HTML5, but it's still a nice tool to get a quick overview of the quality, the accessibility of the web page, and totally as well. These are all testing tools. The heading map is a plugin to give you a nice overview of the heading structure, and if there's any missing headings, such as the example that Marloes gave between an H1 and an H3, if there's a missing H2, this will throw an error. The web developer that's loaded by the browser, so that's available in your browser by default. You can use that to disable all the JavaScripts and the CSS, and then have a look at how the page looks like, and then you will see these errors where the date is above the heading. Really useful. Contrast analyzer is a great way to test contrast between the text and the background, but the X developer also does that for you. The nice thing about X, it can only test contrast between text and a solid background color. If there's text on an image, it will show you like, hey, this might be an error, please have a look, and then you can indicate yourself if this has enough contrast or not, and you can even leave a mark for yourself for later to fix. Really helpful. And Thinkify is one I would like to demonstrate. It's a nice one, since you can use it to simulate a lot of disabilities. Thinkify is also a Chrome plugin created by a team of usability and accessibility experts in Sweden and financed by the Swedish Post and Telecom Authority. You can see a lot of disabilities that you can try and experience the website if you were having such a disability, like contrast errors, peripheral vision. You can also see like, hey, 1 out of 20 people have problems seeing green. You can see how the website looks if you were having that vision issue. Also like the names Thanatobians. This is what a friend of mine actually has this problem, and if I'm talking to him, he's always like looking and trying to find my eyes in this spot. It's really, the first time was really weird. Yeah, this is dyslexia. So try it out, it's really nice. It also has a test functionality just like X does. You can see on the left here you can select, check the headings, check the contrast, for example. The first heading is not an H1. We have contrast issues here. So yeah, that's about it, I guess. Then, I think this is the third time you'll be hearing about Frontend United today. Last year we co-organized Frontend United. We had 450 attendees. We had speakers like Harry Roberts, Hayden Pickering, Heather Burns, Sarah Vieira, Blake Newman, a guy called Dries Buitart, you might know him. Preston So was there as well. So a lot of great names. Make sure to mark 16 to 18 May in your agenda, subscribe to our newsletter and buy tickets whenever they are available. It's ridiculously cheap. I think it's about $130 for a 2-day conference, and we have amazing workshops on the Thursday as well. That being said, any questions? Do we need a mic? Or, yeah. Ruben.
Thank you, it was a great presentation. So currently I'm working in a project that is for development in Iceland. So we need a A, accessibility. So we jumped into the same issue that you just presented. But the thing is, there is so many things to fix. So what is your suggestion for a better approach to fix all the stuff? Because out of the box, Drupal has, some, let's say, bad practices. Let's say the order of the H1, H2, as you just presented. So what are your, let's say, techniques or secret keys to approach a project like this?
Well, our secret is that we just start from the start. It's quite hard. Is it still working? Yeah. It's quite hard to adjust the accessibility issues if they're already there. So if you already start with building accessible websites, it costs less effort. I don't know what the best practice is in your case, but I can take a look at it if you want. That was the real question, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting actually. I can show you the project.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions? Also to it's really working. There it is.
Yeah.
That's better. So I like to compare accessibility with responsive design a lot, since if you have a website and you have to make it accessible afterwards, after the project, is really expensive and difficult. And the same goes for responsive design. If you have to do it afterwards, it's really difficult. And where like 10 years ago, it would be pretty fine to say, hey, we have a website and our audience is not using mobile devices, or we don't need responsive design or a responsive website. Everyone now makes responsive websites, and I think we should have the same focus like accessibility. Every website should be accessible out of the box, even if it's not a government or organization.
Thank you for the talk. Very interesting. I have questions about how you integrate accessibility in your delivery process. Like, do you have like some points where you actually like structurally check it, like in code review, or do you like make it like a testing point when you do it? Like, how do you integrate it?
Yeah, for now it's just part of the manual testing that we do during the sprints. One colleague tests the work of another colleague. We are trying or testing with automatic testing as well. There are tools that can do that for you, but a lot still needs to be tested manually. And I also think that we are not like experts, and we I think most of the websites that we build are not fully accessible at all. But because we know some of the information and the material, we tend to at least do the quick wins and the quick fixes during our project and make them more accessible than not.
I would like to add to that, like, we receive training as employees of Legal Group, and so it's not like responsible for one person in the organization that has to like remind everyone. But I think in your organization it's important that everyone's aware and make sure that everyone knows these simple tricks, because they apply to every developer and even project managers and salespeople, and everyone should know.
It's a good workout.
Give the man a drink tonight.
You have shown us how to put the language on the HTML, but how to put it on the paragraph or the small part of the sentence. Is there a tool inside CK editor how to do it? Or should the editors switch to the source code and do it?
So, thanks for asking that question. Yes. The CK editor has a button called Language of Parts. It's disabled by default, but it is available. So if you go to the CK editor settings in Drupal core, you can drag this icon with a Japanese character on it. You can drag it to your toolbar, and it's easy to select the text and make it. I actually, it was my fault, or I wrote the patch to include that button into Drupal core together with Wim Leers a few years ago. So thanks for asking. Another question?
Did anyone get a solution for the H1, H2, H3 problem Marloes talked about?
Tell me.
No, it's someone here that does that. We have the same issue with some of the views. So I'm curious if someone knows the answer.
I mean, the thing that we did is when you have to skip, let's say H2 for some reason, because the designer did it that way, what we do is we don't skip it, we just hide it.
Just a visually hidden
Exactly.
hidden tag. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So in the example that we've shown, where you have a H1 as page title and then news items below it, which are H3, you can add an H2 and make it hidden for visual for sighted people. But then the heading structure is correct. But in my opinion, it should add value to the context of the page. So having an H1 called news overview and then an H2 called news overview and then you have H3s, it doesn't really add any value. And in that case, I wouldn't do it that way. I would think of a better hidden title. Also, regarding hidden titles, one remark: please, if you deliver your website or publish a new website, check your website with a tool, for example, like the links browser, or disable your CSS, because I think a lot of us forget that all the menus in Drupal have headings as well. And I see so many sites that have a footer menu called footer menu as title, which is hidden and we don't see it, but screen reader does. So check your own website.
Been there, done that.
To build on the question that we just had of like solutions, I think a part of the solution is also there is a misconception, I believe, that you can only have one H1 on a page. Usually it's true, but there are a lot of extra ways on how you could play with that. Because if you have one article element on the page, and inside that article element you have an H1, then it's actually okay to have another article or a section or an aside or one of those grouping HTML tags and use the header
And mark.
like importance from 1 to 3, H1 to 3. It's still okay to use those as long as you group them in the right section, for example, or article. So you can still play around with that.
All right.
We have 3 more minutes, so
That was fast. I wanted to add something to the accessibility issues, like when you have a search page or a product overview page and there's some sort of filtering on the side, like facet. We have to make sure, like when we select a filter, the page doesn't reload entirely. Like because when you're tapping through the filters, through the menus, and let's say you select the filter and the page refreshes, you have to start tapping from the start again. And that's something important as well to take care of.
Yeah, we always try to fix that with JavaScript. So it starts with the tagging starting with the filter we just adjusted. That's what you meant, right? Yeah. Okay. Good.
Or could do it with Ajax as well.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
okay, I think the team will have to finish up here. Thank you very much for the presentation. And